guys, welcome back to TSI. I'm Dave. Thanks for watching. So last week I posted a video on YouTube showing an old friend returning, showing the old Saiga rifle coming back into my collection. Now, what exactly is the story behind that, and why am I referring to it as an old friend? Well, for many, many reasons. The first reason is that the SGL-21, a converted Saiga, was actually the first semi-automatic rifle I owned. I bought with my own money. So in that sense, it's also an old friend. Another reason why is because I actually did own a Saiga exactly like this, but I sold it. Now, why did I sell it for? Well, what happened is that I wanted to buy, or rather build a new AR-15, and frankly, I needed the money to do it. I don't have unlimited funds here, although, trust me, I would love to have them. So I actually ended up selling my Saiga just after the import ban occurred. I think it's about a year ago by the time, or at the time of this, the filming of this video. So I ended up actually buying the Saiga several months before because I actually had a feeling that this import ban was going to happen. One day I was sitting at home and I thought to myself, well, with the situation in Russia going the way it is, I'm sure Obama is going to try some kind of sanction. And I said to myself, he's probably going to go after the fucking Saiga rifles. And I ended up being correct. It was funny, I was talking to the guys at the gun shop, and I said to them, you know, you guys better buy a Saiga now because they're probably going to be an import ban due to what's going on with Russia. And I realized I sounded like a friggin' kook, you know, I sounded like a tinfoil hat guy. They're going to ban everything! And in this case, I was actually right. So I ended up selling my Saiga a couple of months, maybe a month or two, I can't remember the exact time frame, after I bought it. And what's funny about that is a lot of people were like utterly deriding me for doing that. It's like, how could you sell that thing? That thing is going to be a collectible. But there's a really, really bright side to this story. The man I sold to, I met him on Arms List. We actually ended up talking quite a bit. We actually ended up finding out that we have a lot in common. I mean, we're both gun guys, right? And to this day, we're still friends. So I ended up selling a Saiga, and I ended up getting a friend. So the first Saiga may not be mine anymore, and I might have sacrificed it. I might have taken a risk sacrificing it, but man, it was really worth it. It was really worth it. We've gone shooting together. We've talked for hours upon hours on Skype. We're just really good friends right now. And I'm glad I did it. But now it's going back into, why do you have yet another Saiga if you felt compelled to sell the original one? Well, I was talking to my friends on this channel, TSI, and I was talking about it for months. Like, I need a new hunting rifle. I need a new hunting rifle. I need a new hunting rifle. And we were throwing back ideas. I went from just buying another Mosin Nagant for about $100 or whatever, to going all the way to something like a Remington 700 or even a Ruger American rifle, all of which are great choices. But then one day I was actually looking up just guns on Long Island where I live, and I saw that this gun was available at a relatively local shop. Well, it's about an hour away from me, at a shop called Dark Storm Industries in East Islip, New York. Now, first I want to say that Dark Storm has been absolutely wonderful to me in the past. I actually brought in an AR-15 lower receiver, and I had trouble getting one of the pins in because my receiver was particularly tight. I took it there, and they didn't even know I was going to buy the Saiga at this point. They actually fixed the problem, they reblued it, and they gave it back to me, and they did it for free of charge. So absolutely satisfied with their customer service and their dedication to their craft. It's not the first time something like this has happened with them. I've just been immensely satisfied with them in general. So go there if you're from Long Island. Hey, even if you're not from Long Island, give it a shot. But I digress. I ended up looking at this one because I thought to myself, hey, wait a minute. A 7.62-39 is basically a 30-30 in semi-automatic form. I have experience with Kalashnikov, AK, Saiga type rifles, so why not just do it again? So that's what I did. And honestly, they didn't overcharge me for it. It was about the same price that I paid last time, the first time or before they were banned. So I ended up walking out with this gun for effectively $650. So around the same price that I originally paid, which I was really surprised that I actually found something like this on a shop in Long Island. This must be the last Saiga on Long Island, like ever. If I ever see another one, I would be honestly surprised. Now, honestly, I was hoping this thing would have been in something like 223 because I already have a 7.62-39 AK, or an SGL rather, and it's kind of redundant to have them both. But anyway, again, I digress. This gun is actually quite good for hunting in New York State. Now, the one issue that it does have is that it comes with a 10-round magazine. In New York, you're required to use a 5-round magazine for hunting, but modification is not particularly difficult to achieve. But more than that, though, why would somebody want a gun like this? Why would somebody want a Saiga rifle? It's just an AK, and not even that, it's an ugly version of an AK. It's got this poopy-doopy stock. It's got the moved-up trigger guard. It's got no muzzle device. It just looks like a really fucked up AK. And in some ways it is, and in some ways it is not. As you know, I live in a banned state. As I said, I live in New York State. And a lot of the time, we don't have a lot of options for the kind of rifles that we have. After the SAFE Act, immediately after the SAFE Act, I'm talking about a few weeks, nobody knew what guns were legal and illegal in the state. We had to go through different channels in order to figure it out until we eventually discovered several months later that lower receiver AR-15s, just the lower receiver, are legal. But until then, until that determination was made, we actually were going out for getting these. And when you compare something to this to the Mini 14 or even the SKS, it's a hell of a better option. A lot of people in banned states will complain to me and say, how could you deride the Mini 14 so much when it's literally one of the only guns that we can use in a banned state? Well, I call fucking bullshit on that. Back a couple of months ago or about a year ago, these guns were available and they're better than Mini 14s. So, again, I know these guns are harder to find, but even if you can find this gun for about $850, which, by the way, is what a normal Mini 14 costs, buy this over the Mini. It is so much better. It is so much more reliable. It's basically an AK. It's the same action. So you're going to see a dummy round pop out of the chamber. Don't freak out. And that ejection is really hard even when I do that. But, again, it's an AK action. Same thing. And it's a smooth AK action too. I'll have to say though, this particular Saiga is actually a really smooth action. I'm surprised because the last Saiga that I had wasn't super duper smooth. So what exactly is a Saiga rifle and why do they actually exist in that particular configuration? Well, the Russian arms manufacturer Kalashnikov concern actually had to get around U.S. import restrictions that were imposed in the 1980s and early 90s. There were different stipulations where you couldn't have guns that have a pistol grip and whatever the hell that bullshit is. So what they did is they pretty much turned it into a sporting rifle, and that's exactly what the origin of the Saiga rifle is. So with that known, a lot of areas in the country don't recognize these guns as assault weapons because they lack the cosmetic, and by the way, it's cosmetic, not fit. They characterize these things as cosmetic, not functional differences. They have no pistol grip. They have no muzzle device. That's pretty much what defines. Oh, and no bayonet lug either. I can't even remember this shit sometimes because it's so fucking stupid. So that's primarily why they're not considered an evil, deadly assault weapon. So basically you're getting a gun that is banned state compliant for the most part. I think there are some states in the country that do not allow Saigas because of reasons. And it's an AK action. Why not? And also, if you ever do plan to move out of the country, these things can be converted to become a more standardized Kalashnikov. Now, some of the features that I want to go over on this gun, and things that you probably should know as a first-time purchaser, or if you see these. The first biggest thing you have to be aware of is that these magazines are not standard AK magazines. They are not. They're Saiga magazines. In order to actually get a regular AK magazine to fit, you'll have to modify the magazine. You'll have to modify the magazine well, and you'll have to put a bullet guide in there, which will allow the AK magazine to fit in. Of course, it is perfectly legal to modify a Saiga rifle to accept AK magazines and still not have any of the deadly features on your gun, or the evil features on your gun. So that's also a possibility, and it's something you might want to consider if you do live in a banned state. Another thing about the Saiga rifles that you should know is that none of these parts are standardized. This part right here, well, basically what happens, what the Russians do is when they actually bring these guns into the country, they build them as sporter rifles. And what that means is that they put all these really funky things on them, like this stock and this guard and everything like that. So as a first-time buyer, you cannot just take these out of the box and just convert them to a regular AK. Yes, there are aftermarket accessories that allow you to effectively just put a pistol grip stock on here. It's like all ghetto-fied and shit, and it's made by Tabco. That's the one I know of. But it's not really converting it at all. A real true conversion involves actually cutting out this area right here and moving it forward to this part right here. Because on a regular AK, this trigger guard and this magazine release are actually almost touching. Actually, they are touching. So another thing too is that this handguard also is non-standard. In addition to this gas tube is also non-standard. So you'll have to do a lot of different conversions. Oh, and also the sight is non-standard. So in order to actually convert these things, you have to do quite a bit of machine work. But it's not impossible. Companies like Rifle Dynamics and JBI actually charge money and they'll allow you to do it. Or you can actually have Bubba Jim do it, but I don't recommend that, even though it is a fairly easy conversion. If I was going to recommend one of the two between Rifle Dynamics and JBI, I would say probably JBI is the more economical choice. I'm not knocking Rifle Dynamics. I'm not. They're excellent guns, or they're excellent manufacturers. They're excellent craftsmen. Blah, 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 blah. You've heard that a million times. But the thing is, though, they just do things that you may not necessarily need on a fighting AK. You essentially just want it to be a functional gun that can defend your life. You don't need it to be extra awesome fitted and extra awesome finished and rounded off and all this fancy smancy shit. So with JBI, they effectively just convert the gun and refinish it. And honestly, these guns are excellent. These barrels are actually chrome line hammer forged. And their Rockwell hardness is fucking really, really hard. I don't know the numbers very well, but these guns will easily take 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 rounds. They're excellent. That's another reason why these guns are such a bang for their buck. I mean, the quality that goes into these things is actually surprising. You'd think that just because it's Russian, that they just sort of cobble it together and they ship it off and they go, here you go, comrade, have you hit the fucking AK crap gun. It's actually not. A lot of these components are extremely well made. On this particular example of a Saiga, the action is actually rather smooth. As you can see, there's no way that I can stick the charging handle in. You see, with a lot of American-made and or parts guns and or Rossers that exist on the market that have the Tabco G2 in them, where you can effectively just put your hand back here, let go, and the thing will stay there. Actually, I met a guy at a gun shop once in Florida. Another thing about Florida, too, is that he said, we're playing around with a Yugo AK, and he said, or rather, I moved the charging handle back, I got stuck on the Tabco G2, he's like, yeah, it's a bolt hole open device. I'm like, ha! No. But anyway, again, the quality that goes into this thing is absolutely awesome. If you can pick these one up for the standard price at about $650, $700, you're doing well. If you can find something that's even in the $800 range, then you're also doing well. Yes, the dog is getting very excited about this Saiga AK. So, Annie, I'm talking about AKs right now. You have to respect that. Personally speaking, the moment that I plan to leave, or the moment that I leave New York, this thing is getting converted into something not this. But until then, this is actually an excellent choice for a hunting rifle. As I said before, 7.62 39 and 30-30, a very classic deer hunting round, are nearly identical ballistically. Not exactly identical, but nearly identical. And I remember I was talking to somebody recently, and they said, well, why would you want to get a Saiga for it? It's just the worst hunting gun of all time. Well, maybe in certain areas. For example, they said that, oh, well, you can't hit anything with it. Again, it's the argument about how AKs are inaccurate. And I'll link down below as to why that perception exists. But that's one of the reasons why they told me. Another more logical explanation as to why you wouldn't want to hunt with one of these was made by Evan on our channel. He said that where he's from in Texas, the ranges that actually you might be required to hunt hog and stuff like that are typically several hundred yards. Either 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, 300 yards with an AK you can obviously do, but 800 with an AK, you may not want to. And those are typical ranges for hog hunting and other types of hunting in Texas. Now, being that I live in the Northeast, most hunting ranges are about 80 yards and in. It's because I live in a heavily forested, heavily mountainous area, especially in the upstate New York region. So, the Saiga rifle. These things can be converted, as I said, and disassembly of them is also very, very easy. If you know how to disassemble a Kalashnikov, you know how to disassemble this. The one thing I would caution you about is that this gas tube thing right here, this little lever, is significantly harder than a standard AK to actually move and actually disassemble it. There is actually a tool that comes with the Saiga rifle, and being that I am never prepared for these videos, I just sort of sit them and do them. The tool's over there, but basically you have the tool and there are several holes on it. It's a sort of a tubular thing. And what you can do actually is you can take that tool, take one of the holes in there, once this is all disassembled of course, and actually use it to gain additional leverage on the lever, which helps a great deal. One more thing I want to talk about when it comes to the Saiga rifles and just stuff to know as a first-time buyer. This little thing over here is actually a scope rail, right here. So if you have something that can actually fit on the scope rail, you'll be able to easily put an optic on it. I recommend the Midwest Industries AKSM mount. It's a little bit heavy, it's a little bit long, but what's great about it is that it allows it basically adds a flat top Picatinny rail on top of your gun, which enables you to put a wide variety of optics, not necessarily just red dots. If you're just going to go with a red dot, you can go with an RS Regulate mount or anything of that sort. So guys, the Saiga rifle, a good choice for a band state person or even just a generalized hunter. I love these guns. They are fun. I would say though that the stock is horrible. You can see when I'm shooting it, it's really not that easy to get a good grip on it. Yeah, it's not that good. I'm not a super tall guy, but it's doable. It's not the worst thing in the world. So anyways, guys, maybe in the future I will actually show what this gun will look like when it is converted. I cannot wait to do that. I don't know what I'm going to turn it into, but it's going to be a hell of a lot more interesting than this thing. So if you ever see one of these guns around, check it out. Definitely buy it. This is a great band state gun, but it is not, it's another point I wanted to raise, it is not the greatest band state gun. The greatest band state gun is the AR-15. So what do I mean by that? Well, you'll have to watch another time and I'll actually talk about why the AR-15 is the greatest band state gun ever made. Alright though guys, thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing. Let me know how you feel, let me know if you have any experience with these Saiga rifles. And yeah, leave a comment. Alright guys, this is Dave with TSI. Have a good one.